Hi, and welcome to the SourceLife podcast. My name is Nevo, and I am the product-led growth at Novu. Together with me, we have Emil, Novu's community manager. Stay with us as we unravel top founder decisions to build their cost companies and the mistake and success they have achieved.
We had a very special episode about remote working. We have been talking to Tomer, the founder of Novu, about building a remote company in today's world. And we got some really awesome insights about work-life balance, communication between teams, time zones, culture. We talked about hiring and even how to tackle depression. So let's just get to it. Hello, Nevo. Hello, Tomer. How you doing?
Good, and thank you for having me for the second time. Excited to be here.
Nevo, how you doing?
Well, another day working.
In a few words, just for new listeners, Nevo and Tomer, please introduce yourself. Tell us what you're doing.
Okay, so my name is Nevo. I'm the product-led growth at Novu, and it's basically some kind of marketing just for developers, but not the traditional one. Try to promote the company in every possible way, get more traffic, more users, get our word out there, and talk with the community.
Again, thank you for inviting me again. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Novu. Been an entrepreneur for the past 9 years almost, working with the same co-founder. I'm having fun, a lot of fun.
All right. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Emil. I'm the dev role for Novu. I'm still figuring out what I'm doing. I'm just creating content, talking and developing relations with community members and making this place be much more enjoyable and much more appealing. So this episode, we're going to talk about remote working. Nevo, would you like to present a bit more about what is maybe the insight or what are the things that we would like to get out of this episode?
Yeah, sure thing. So when we are talking about a remote company, people thinking that if you just all our employees are working remotely, but it's far more than that. I was working for another company for a few years. Some of the employees work remotely, some work from the office. And I always felt that there was a problem with communication. They try to communicate with me, during the day, all the time, like synchronically, like most teams are doing. And I was not always available. So I think in terms of building a remote company, it's not only about everybody's working remotely. You have to create some tools in order for everybody to actually be able to work remotely.
Tomer, you founded few companies already, and Novu is your third company, right?
Fourth company.
Fourth,
Yeah.
all right, fourth company. So if you care, please elaborate on how it worked in your previous companies and what changed this time.
It's just like any other. We evolved, both team and myself. First company was a very office-based company. We had this small office. We started, our first office was my bedroom at my parents' house. And then our second office was my living room in my first house living in. And then the third office was an actual office space in a building that since then was already run down and rebuilt. I think when we just started, I would definitely say we didn't even thought about it, right? You don't really know how office are going to affect your team communication or your company culture right off the bat. It's something you kind of need to learn as you grow and need to see what's going to be best for you. But our first company was a very office-based company. The second one was admittedly, it was both from Israel and the States, but it still was a very office-based company, and we had basically what's being called as clusters, where the Israeli cluster and we had the New York cluster. but it still was a very office-based company. And in that company, we probably had the worst communication issues ever because time zone was, we were a very sync nature company. And Israel and New York City, it's like maybe I think 7 hours difference. So most days we were kind of starting 9 a.m. local Israeli time. And then obviously around 2, 3 p.m., the New York office would wake. And then we would keep on working up until, 10, 11 p.m. because we want to finish when they're done. And so obviously we got a lot of stress was rising high and a lot of fatigue. A lot of the time I would drive. So at the time I was living in Modi'in and the office space was in Tel Aviv. So a lot of times I started driving like 5:30 a.m. from Modi'in to Tel Aviv to avoid traffic. And then I would sit there and then driving back around 11 p.m. It sounds like anecdotal story, but actually that's part of an office living, right? You have to avoid traffic. You have to make sure commute is a big thing of working from office. Since then, we're much more into remote. We had some hybrid in the first company. And then when we started Novu, we decided it's going to be fully remote for many reasons. But I would say one big reason is you're able to get people who are much, talented people from all across the world, and you're not tied up to your local geography. Yeah, I think that's it's funny retrospecting on that.
I really like the thing with the time zone between countries because it's really making everybody to work maybe around the clock. Because some people in some continent and another in another continent, and they have totally different time zone. One can have a meeting in 9 a.m. in the morning and another one in the evening, right? So sometimes we don't pay attention, but we can work the entire day because we are waiting for meetings. And it's not only that, it's even funnier because we are like a funny country, Israel, because our weekend is like on Friday and Saturday. and the rest of the world weekend is like Saturday and Sunday. So we basically have some days that we are not working or the people in the other countries are not working. And we have always, to somehow build everything up together so everybody can be in all the meeting and always get like the support they need. I think that's a really big challenge to build things like that.
I think one of the big things in kind of going the full remote culture is trying to avoid meetings, right? I think it's extremely unproductive when the team is scarce throughout the world. I mean, of course, you want to, at least at the beginning, try and make the team on close time zones because you don't want to have people, let's say, I don't know, Australia and San Francisco, right? That's going to show a lot of stress signs. But if you can try and make sure the team's kind of close. But again, async for the win here, because if you're going to try and make everything by meetings, you're going to find out people are going to work from really early morning up until really late night, and stress level is just going to rise higher and higher. You can't really build a company like that. I mean, you can probably try, but people are going to leave you quite quickly.
One of the things that kind of funny sometimes to realize is that when I personally kind of finishing my workday, even sometimes it's already at night or something, and the time differences between me and Nevo is like how much? 6, 7 hours? I don't know.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, when I'm already going to sleep, Nevo is like, "Hey, good morning. How you doing?" and just starting his workday, and it's really crazy how everything global is actually seen inside the company and inside even the community. Like we have our Discord as an evidence for that. One of the funny things that I actually got from what Tomer you were saying is that your first company was from you said from your room, right? Something
right.
Yeah, from your room, and then it evolved to your living room, then to offices, and right now it's kind of back to remote.
Right. I mean, technically speaking, our office is my house because for a lot of official papers, you kind of need to have an office space. So it's my house. But yeah, we're fully remote. So we do give team members the ability to kind of find their own office space, which most often than not, Nevo is there, right? So most often Nevo is actually within a shared space. But yeah, usually people are not working from office. We pay a good amount of money for every one of our team members to have their own home office. I just got my new standing desk, so I'm extremely happy about that one. And yeah, I think there's a lot to it going from office based to hybrid or even fully remote.
And it's not only that now we're seeing more and more remote companies, it's also becoming easier to become remote companies, right? Because many years ago, if you wanted to be remote, you would actually have to do a lot of operation and focus on that. You would need to open maybe offices in another country in order to hire employees and things like that. But today, we are not even focusing on that much because we have some amazing services such as Deal that they know exactly how we can hire employees in other country, what amount of day off they need to get, their holidays. They're basically doing the whole operation for us, that even things that we're not even thinking about, it's suggesting you during their wizard of like putting out another employee. So yeah, that's amazing, right?
I think there's something, so, looking into remote hiring and basically any type of hiring, right? When you hire someone, you need to make sure logistics is done and you're able to supply them with equipment, and you need to make sure legal is done. And obviously you need to hire based on local laws, right?
Yeah.
And as you stated, if someone has, let's say in Israel, we have, I think it's 12 days mandatory vacation days, and then another 12 days mandatory of sick days. But in Sweden, for example, they have 25 days of mandatory vacation days, but no sick days, right? So every single space have different laws. And then obviously salary are changes between different countries, different cities. And then accounting is a huge issue. Taxation is vastly different. Obviously options, which all of you are getting, are vastly different. And Deal kind of takes some of it off, that they're making sure you don't do every really bad mistakes, which is, it's a big thing. But we still have to take care of a lot of the legal work that's on us. And whenever we're talking to a new country, I speak with local lawyers to make sure, we kind of, we're not doing something that is fundamentally wrong. And I'm talking to new accountant to make sure we're not in any kind of exposure. With that being said, equipment, it's still a really big pain. I mean, right now, in Israel, we have a local suppliers. We don't have any local suppliers in all the other countries we're hiring. So, Nevo, you kind of felt that. It's really hard for us to make sure we get the equipment because in Thailand, it's not as easy. And then in Sweden, David, one of our engineers, he's living in a small, suburban, like countryside city. It's not really a big bustling city. So even to make sure, equipment is being sent there, it's like a month. Obviously, all of those are not as easy. But yeah, I think, the world become much easier place to hire remotely, because I think we have Deal and tremendous others fully remote kind of hiring solutions. And then there are a lot of kind of equipment like Swag App and big companies like that. Making sure you're able to ship whatever you want to whichever country you want. And presumably, as long as we keep hiring like that, I think it's going to get easier.
Yeah. For example, I really believe that many people who will be listening to this episode probably were wondering or will wondering about remote working and remote spaces. And I really believe that it's kind of a scary thing. I mean, it's a scary thing to take this kind of a leap, kind of to the unknown, because there are so many things that you need to consider when you going off offices. And can you maybe please elaborate on the process that you were going through, on the risks maybe that were involved in moving to remote spaces and remote working, and what you were afraid of, what hold you back from doing it before?
Right. So I think I'd like to answer this question. I'd like to kind of think about it in two very different ways. First of all, is the company side, right? As a company, there are a lot of benefits and a lot of risks of moving into fully remote manner. Just to state a few, right? So benefits, obviously, you get the ability to hire from a lot of places. So there are a lot more talent to choose from. Salaries, that's actually it's a different topic, but salaries might be cheaper for you. You're able to kind of work with amazing individuals that have sometimes, if you're building something very communication specific and you have local talents that were building that in, let's say, Belgium, right? I mean, if I were just hiring in Israel, I can't get to that specific talent. So you get a very high specialty talent there. And then obviously there are risks, right? Would I be able to manage the team? Can the team communicate? Is the day-to-day productivity is going to stay up? That's just to name a few. And I think for us, I think the biggest one, and it's both a risk and something to gain, is the company culture. So if you're going to be an office space company, you need to make sure that your water cooler talks are working for you, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of decisions are being made there. But when you go to a fully remote manner or even hybrid, it doesn't really work like that anymore. You need to make sure people are able to communicate correctly and you do get those water cooler talks. But with that being said, you need to make sure full context is being transmitted to all teams because they're not there together. And if Nevo and Emil just talked about something and kind of decided it, I mean, it's one thing when it's in the office, but it's a totally different thing when they just communicated by themselves in a meeting. And then what we kind of realized is if we're going to go on a full office space, we're basically going to lose too much of a talent. So we're not going to do that. Specifically for us, right? Open source. You get a lot of contributors on the open source, and you need to learn how to work with them. So you already basically bought in the partially remote structure. And so looking into the hybrid, right, that's probably the easiest one to say, you know what, okay, so I won't go into full remote. Let's do hybrid. It's easier. I actually think it's harder, to be frank, because when you adapt a fully remote mentality, then you basically already say, you know what, I'm going to have those issues. I'm going to have those problems. And now I need to face them head on and solve them, right? So just to mention a few, depression and productivity and communication, you already kind of, you know what, those are my issues. I need to find a way to challenge them and tackle them head on. But when you go to the hybrid, you can say, you know what, I'm not really going to get to those issues because whenever they're going to come, I'm going to say, you know what, go back to the office and we'll solve that. And so basically you end up with worst of both worlds because depression and all of those bad issues from remote are still going to be there. You're not really facing them. You're only saying, you know what, it's going to be resolved by the office space. And then the other big thing, and that's, I think it's really go down when you become one big cluster and I would say some others scattered around. So imagine this. Let's say we're going to build a hybrid solution and then we're going to get, 6 people in Boston and then 10 others scattered in Israel, New York City, California, Sweden, Thailand. Whatever ended up being happening is you have really a cluster of people working from the office and acting like it's a full office. And they're kind of able to make decisions together and get very chummy together because sitting in the same place, their happy hour is actually a happy hour, right? They're sitting together drinking beer and they're able to kind of go off hours and hang out together. And all the other people are basically left out. They're not invited. And so you end up having really bad culture where some people are more cohesive and others are not. And so when we realized that, we said, you know what, we're going to be fully remote. No one is going to be closer to the CTO or the CEO. No one is going to have better communication than the other. We're all going to basically rely on that.
Then, Tomer, you just shared many things that kind of obstacles, issues, and we can even say problems that you will face eventually if you are moving to remote working method.
Yeah.
What are maybe really 3 even top things that you think that could help new people or people that are considering to moving to remote working, what are the top 3 things that they should consider or should act upon?
Okay, so I think I'll probably reframe it a bit, but I think if you're considering, right, it's not for everyone. You should know if it's for you or not. So if you're considering kind of fully remote or even partially remote, I would ask a couple of things, right? A, as the founders, are you very much pro remote working? If the answer is fundamentally no, it's probably not going to work for you as a business, because if you're going to work from an office and everyone else going to be remote, to my eyes, to my view, you're going to build up an unhealthy company culture where people who are much closer to you are basically going to have the upper hand. They're going to be chummy with the founders. They're going to be more likely to get promotion. They're going to be more likely to be listened to. And it's just an unhealthy culture. So one thing is, are you as founder really pro remote? And are you going to act the same as you make the company? The other one is, are you looking for only local talent, or are you open to work with remote talent? And again, if you're building a hardware solution that is very specific to Nigeria, I don't know, maybe it's better for you to not work with global talent. But if you're going just like us on an open source motion, where you're basically already working with a remote team, it's not your team, it's the open source community, it becomes much easier to kind of say, you know what, let's do everything remote. Everyone is acting just like the open source community.
Yeah.
And then actually, I want to emphasize on that is that also remember that when you're working remotely, you can talk your own language. Let's say you're not from the US, right? You're from Israel and you're talking Hebrew.
Perfect.
You need to change the entire conversation to English. Maybe your developers or other employees don't know English. That's like a big issue because they would not be able to communicate with the rest of the team members. So,
That's right. One of the things that actually many companies are already doing at some point in the lifetime of the company is hiring outsourced support from different countries, like to manage some kind of solutions or development things and everything like this. So basically, companies already, maybe not understanding it enough, already doing some kind of remote working with different staff.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's big difference between fully remote and office clustering. Office clustering is basically just like we had on our first or on second business, is where you have clusters of people working within offices of the local economy, the local place. Mm-hmm. It behaves more like cluster of sync communication solution as opposed to fully remote async by nature communication. So it's not really the same. Obviously, there are advantages of doing clustering because some of the things we talked about earlier, like operational wise, it's easier. You don't have to work with, 10 different legal staffs and 10 different accounting staff. Languages are usually kind of easier. You don't need to worry as much about accents. So there is an advantage to doing that. In our case, I think it would still promote the unhealthy behavior of both doing those water cool talk and making sure or creating this culture where people are kind of chummy between themselves, but people who are not there are kind of left out. So in my mind, it's not as good. Obviously, if you're already 200 people business, it might be a bit more difficult to become fully remote. But we've seen that. Airbnb just talked about that a couple of weeks back. They're moving to be fully remote business and they're not going to return to their offices. And I know about other companies that does that, not 5,000, 200, 150 people. We did it actually in our first business. When COVID kind of hits, we moved everyone to be fully remote and they never came back. Just stay like that. So
yeah, but really COVID-19, it's what started this whole motion. And not only that, I'm just want to build remotely. Now it's also like acceptable to build remotely. Like when you say to people, I'm building something remotely, they say, okay, makes sense. We know that this thing exists. But there's a lot of other problem with it, and I think we also trying to tackle those kind of problems because working from home first is not always so easy because you're alone. You don't have any company. And when you're going maybe even to co-working space or stuff like that, you don't always talk to the other people. Maybe it depends on the person because they're not working with you, right? So it depends how friendly you are. So you might get a little bit lonely sometimes. We actually try to tackle that with amazing thing. Like we have a VR meetings, we have coffee time every morning. We try to push people to talk together, even if they are like from a totally different department. And these kind of things it's really sometimes for me it's really hard because a lot of people know me from work and I'm like a very talkative person. I can talk all day, and I don't have anybody to talk to.
So I think there are two major things. At the minimum, right, when the business is hiring, they should make sure you are a good candidate for that, right? I can tell you for a fact that a lot of people didn't join Novu, and both sides, right? Both the candidate and our end, we kind of say, you know what, I think it's not good for you right now. You are too much of an office person, and it's perfectly fine. You don't need to be alarmed by that. So first thing to make sure is the candidate and the company are a good fit into this fully remote culture. And then the other one, as you stated, is if you want people to not get deeply depressed working for a fully remote company, you need to make active investment in it. You need to make sure not only you get the async nature working, and you guys know we're still keep on working on that. It's nothing we already nailed, right? We're still working on that. So you need to make sure you're doing active investment in that. And then, you need to make sure you have those coffee meetings. It's kind of mimics the whole water cooler talks. And then you need to make sure you're investing in making sure the team kind of talk to each other. Because I think one of the biggest issue we kind of faced, and Nevo, and I think Nevo, you one of the people who kind of brought it up, is to make sure you kind of have the familiarity with other people on the company, because you work with developers and you work with Emil, for an instance, but you don't necessarily work with the operations, and you won't necessarily work with, I don't know, other people. So you need to make sure you kind of find a way to make it a bit easier for everyone, because it's not going to be easy. You need to be invested. You need to invest in game time for the team. You need to invest in other entertainment activities. And then, you need to be investing in making sure people are there and are talkative about the problems they have, because otherwise the distance actually make every single small problem much harder for you to solve.
And, I want to even talk about it more. You can work years with people and never meet them, with just a video and them. And I really like the fact that lately we are trying to connect between people, maybe even like on a physical level. So, for example, you are going to fly now to Sweden with Gali, and you're going to meet with one of our developers, right, David? Right. You're going to work together a little bit, meet each other in person. It's going to be fun and stuff. And maybe later we are also planning like flying me and David back to Israel, have like a week or something, get to know everybody in person. I think founders and companies in general, they should emphasize and put a lot of things that they didn't think about before. They need to think about this kind of stuff, about all this physical emotion. We're not like machines in the end.
Definitely. We're just planning out. We're starting to look at our team resort right now, because you're right. At the end of the day, we're people, and we need those physical meetings and physical closeness. And ultimately VR does do something like it, but it's far from it. It's, to me, I think it's much better than only Zoom. It creates this different experience, and it does promote a bit more closeness between people and about a bit more physical connection, but it's far from actual meeting person. And I think resort and stuff like that are very important for the team. And, other resorts, or flying Nevo to meet, I don't know, Emil in Israel, because you do need that from time to time. It's important.
Yeah, I need to hear Nevo speaking all day long live. Like, I need to see you, man.
I won't be able to work if I do that,
Actually, I would like to share my personal experience as well. as a kind of newbie to all this remote working kind of thing. And I have been in Novo for, I think, 3 or 4 months already. Novo is the first company that I was actually able to work remotely. And working remotely was kind of my long time dream, even because of many reasons. Because I really think that something that we did not really touch yet, and I don't know if we will have time for it or not, but the thing with the work-life balance, that you actually are able to be more connected with your family, your pets. I mean, yeah, Tomer can agree with me on that. It's something that really kind of life-changing. I think even my mental state got much, much, much better since I got this kind of an opportunity, because I know that, yeah, I should and focusing on my work, but I also know that I have the option and the opportunity to be much closer to my wife and to my dog. And if something, I can just get this kind of a support I need during the working day or during some kind of an obstacle or challenge that I'm facing. So it's also kind of a really big deal for many people. And I know that many people are really striving for this kind of thing. It's something that we should just put it on the table. And I wanted to share that.
I think, work-life balance is one of the probably most tricky things to nail. And being a founder, I'm definitely failing that. I know for a fact. But hearing you having a better mental state because you have the full remote work. And I'm actually going to pat myself on the shoulder and say, because you're working for Novo, it's, as a founder, it's great to hear. One of my aim is to make sure you have a good place to work for. So for me to hear that you're having fun, Nevoah is having fun, it's a great thing, because it means I built a place that people are having fun working for, and they're becoming better just by doing so. But I think finding the sweet spot between the amount of work we have and the amount of time with your family is hard, because people, on the one hand, it's easy to cut up for those late night work sessions, right? It's only 7 p.m. It's only 8. It's only 9. It's only 10. So it's really easy to get there. On the other hand, you have the priceless opportunity to wake up at 10 a.m. and have a coffee or maybe a breakfast with your wife. Things you wouldn't get working from the office.
Yeah.
And then if you want to take a day off, most often than not, you just need to make sure that people knows that around you, so they'll be able to kind of work with that and around that. And then you're able to kind of fill it in on a Friday or a Saturday or whatever, what feels better for you. So it's tricky to get right. Yeah. I'm failing at it. I have, I would love to tell you should do that. I can't. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I work way too much, wake up 6 a.m. and start to work. And I shouldn't. I really shouldn't. Other times I have maybe 6 hours off doing some off stuff. It's hard. It's really hard to get it right.
A lot of discipline.
Okay, so I think from my takeaways from all this is that building a remote company, you have to take care of work-life balance. It can be good and bad, because you can work all the time around the clock, or you can just have fun in the middle of the day. You have to take care of depression in employees if they have what they're doing during the day, where they work and stuff like that. The third one is maybe how to deal with language and time differences, and also culture. Everybody is the same. We are in Israel, like to talk a lot about money. Other people not. And of course, in the end, how to manage teams remotely. Everybody has their different time and stuff, and how you communicate. We communicate over Discord, but it's not always so easy. And the good thing is that you can hire, and you have a huge amount of opportunity, because you're not limited to your own country. So you can hire from all around the world. You have so much opportunities, and you can actually hire people that you see working during the day and contributing to our GitHub. So that's also amazing.
Yeah, there are definitely much more than this. I think we can happily have another session about the advantages, about the disadvantages, about clustering, about fully remote, about office only. It's really interesting subject. I think actually you can talk to Tamar, our operation, and specifically, I think one of the interesting subject here would be languages and some cultural things. But yeah, it's really interesting.
So I really think that everyone, founders, even working personnel, could take something out of this conversation. And I want to thank Nevo and Tomer. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, ideas, and how you look at all this. I really believe that, of course, we could continue talk about this. Maybe we will make another episode on this subject, or maybe something a bit more particular, but this one probably, here we will end this one. So thank you everyone for listening, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.